The day the family I had been living with decided to tell me the truth was the day they brought their real daughter home. It turned out that the entire narrative of their recent suffering, the one that had compelled me to give up parts of myself, was an elaborate lie. My adoptive father's kidney failure, which had sent me rushing to the hospital to donate one of my own, was a fabrication. He had only wanted my kidney so their long-lost daughter could have it preserved as a medical specimen. My mother's supposed leukemia was also a fiction, invented solely so she could take my bone marrow and, in an act of bizarre cruelty, feed it to their dog. And my brother's recent car accident, the one that supposedly damaged his heart and required an immediate transplant from me, was the most audacious lie of all. They told me I had usurped their true daughter's rightful place for years, living a life of comfort and privilege that should have been hers. This, they explained with chilling calmness, was simply my way of paying her back. They seemed to expect tears, a dramatic breakdown, perhaps a fit of rage. I merely thought of the artificial pump now ticking away in my chest where my heart used to be and let out a soft sigh. But I've been sustaining you with my own life force, I said, my voice even. Without my flesh and blood, none of you will last more than half a month. When the call from my family had come, I went to the hospital without a moment's hesitation, ready to donate my heart. The attending physician reviewed the paperwork with a concerned frown, looking up at me over his glasses. You're Ilara Vance, correct? Are you absolutely certain you wish to donate your heart? Even with a state-of-the-art artificial replacement, this will have a significant impact on your body. I strongly advise you to reconsider this decision. My mother and father stood by, wringing their hands, their faces masks of performative anxiety. I ignored the doctor's warning and gave a firm nod. Donate, I said. Then, turning to my parents, I offered them a quiet reassurance. Don't cry. I'm not going to die. They each clutched one of my hands, their grips tight. Don't worry, Ilara, they cooed in unison. With your father and me here, nothing bad will happen to you. But there was never any real danger for me. The truth is, I am a creature of myth, an ancient being who has been cultivating my power for 1,000 years. I descended from my mountain sanctuary because I am on the verge of enlightenment, a state that requires the accumulation of significant good karma. Donating a heart, an ultimate act of selfless sacrifice, was an unparalleled opportunity to gain a massive amount of it. Besides, I am incapable of dying, and my organs possess the ability to regenerate completely. After I signed the consent forms, they wheeled me into the sterile, cold operating room. Anesthetics have a negligible effect on my physiology, so while my body feigned unconsciousness, my soul drifted upwards, a silent observer watching the surgeons cut open my chest and carefully remove my still-beating heart. I could hear their hushed conversation. I've never seen siblings this close, one surgeon remarked, willing to donate her own heart to her brother and live with an artificial one. Another voice chimed in with a note of confusion. But where is the brother? Our hospital has no record of admitting a patient with that kind of cardiac trauma. A third surgeon shrugged. I don't know, the family just instructed us to remove the heart and give it to them. The surgery concluded an hour later, and I could feel a profound surge of good karma enveloping me, a warm and powerful energy. Yet when they wheeled my gurney out of the operating room, the waiting area was completely empty. When I finally woke up in the recovery room, my supposedly gravely injured brother, Leo, was standing before me looking perfectly healthy and whole. With him and my parents was a young woman I didn't recognize. This, I would soon learn, was Clara, their biological daughter whom they had sold for a pittance when they were poor, only to spend a fortune finding her once they became wealthy. With the most crucial piece of my karmic puzzle now secured, the petty deceptions of this family were of little consequence to me. I had grown accustomed to their remarkable resilience. Just last month, my father had undergone major surgery for his kidney failure and was walking around within 3 days. My mother, after a bone marrow transplant for her leukemia, was back on her feet in less than 12 hours. So, used to these miraculous recoveries, I simply sat up, clutching my chest theatrically. Mom, Dad? I asked. When are we going home? My parents exchanged a quick, uneasy glance, a flicker of suspicion in their eyes. How did she recover so quickly? My mother whispered to my father. She's always been strong, hasn't she? This isn't the first time, he replied, his voice a low murmur as he tried to reassure himself. I sat quietly on the edge of the bed, but I could feel another pair of eyes on me, an unfriendly gaze that was impossible to ignore. The strange girl, Clara, was staring at me with an intensity that felt predatory, as if she were sizing up her prey. Is something wrong? I asked her directly. It was only then that my parents finally made the introduction. Oh, right, let me introduce you, my mother said, forcing a bright smile. This is our biological daughter, Clara. We only just found her recently, and she'll be living with us from now on. I nodded, offering a polite smile of my own. Of course, welcome home. It made sense, after all. This family had expended a significant portion of their future good fortune just to locate her. That was a karmic debt of its own, so welcoming her was the least I could do. Clara's eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked as though she was about to speak, but my parents quickly intervened. We'll talk about everything when we get home. I wondered what secrets they were so desperate to discuss in private. As soon as we arrived back at the house, the four of them, my parents, Leo, and Clara, arranged themselves neatly on the living room sofa, their collective gaze fixed on me like a panel of judges. Elara, my brother Leo began, his tone dripping with condescension. You're truly naive if you still haven't figured it out. He patted his own firm chest. To be honest, I was never in a car accident, and I certainly don't need a heart. I looked at him, feigning confusion. My good karma was secure, so a spark of genuine curiosity about their elaborate charade had finally ignited within me. I decided to play along. Huh? Then why? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Leo, where did my heart go? At my question, Clara's eyes lit up with a malevolent glee, and she shot up from the couch. Your heart, sister, wait. I'll go get it for you. A cruel smile played on her lips as she returned from the kitchen carrying a small platter. Look, big sis, she said, presenting it to me. This is your heart. On the plate, next to a fresh pig's heart, lay my own. Even though the organs of a mythical creature can regenerate, it was a grotesque display. I recalled that it was Leo who had originally convinced our parents to sell Clara for the money to buy toys all those years ago. Humans, I mused, were truly complex creatures. Once they acquired wealth, their loyalties and affections could shift so dramatically. I looked at the Harmon family. They showed no remorse, only a strange admiration for their biological daughter's viciousness. Didn't you say Leo was in a car accident? I pressed. Clara's smile widened. Sorry, sis. I've been researching the differences between humans and pigs lately, and I really wanted to see the difference between a human heart and a pig's heart with my own eyes. Mom, Dad, and Leo all teamed up to trick you just to fulfill my little wish. She held the plate closer to my face. But look at these two. Which one do you think looks fresher? I see, I said, my brow furrowing in disgust. If I weren't the being I am, this family would have utterly destroyed a mortal girl. Seeing my quiet composure, Leo, his expression hardening, stepped forward to shield his biological sister. Let me tell you, he declared, this heart is your compensation to Clara. You've lived in this house for 8 years, enjoying the life of a rich kid, taking the place that rightfully belonged to her. Now that she's back, it's only right that you pay some restitution. I nodded calmly and pressed on. Then what about my bone marrow and my kidney? My parents remained silent, but Clara answered with that same chilling smile. The bone marrow? I took a quick look at it and then dumped it down the drain. As for your kidney, I suddenly developed an interest in preserving specimens that day, so I had it made into one. After she finished her confession, the four of them stared at me, their eyes filled with a hungry expectation. They clearly wanted to see me break down, to witness my emotional collapse, as I realized the sincerity of my sacrifices had been met with nothing but mockery and contempt. But I just smiled. So that's how it is, I said calmly. But without my flesh and blood to sustain you, you probably won't live much longer. Half a month at most. At my words, the room erupted in laughter. Ha 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 ha, Ilara Vance. We were never sick. Those were all lies to trick you. My father scoffed. How could we only live for half a month? Our family is wealthy, and you gotta be a rich socialite for free. Since you enjoyed someone else's life, you should pay the price. We won't kick you out. You can stay here and atone for what you owe Clara. I lowered my gaze, remaining silent. They were right about one thing. Enjoying things that don't belong to you always comes at a price. But they seemed to have forgotten that 7 years ago, when they first adopted me, they had made a very specific deal with me. They had chosen success and an early death over a long life of poverty. That was the true source of their wealth, and their borrowed time was now down to its last 7 days. I had only stayed because living in this house wasn't so bad, and for the sake of accumulating good karma, I had decided to use my own life force to extend their lifespans. It was a pity they no longer seemed to need it. Clara officially returned to the Harmon family and immediately began to behave like a spoiled princess. One morning at the breakfast table, just as I was about to take a seat, she deliberately moved her chair to block my way. "Sister," she said with a saccharine sweetness, "I want to eat. Can you serve me first? You can have your food after I'm finished, okay?" The rest of the family looked on with silent approval, as if it were perfectly natural for me to act as her maid. "Sure," I said. Without any change in my expression, I ladled a full bowl of hot soup. However, I bypassed Clara's outstretched hand and, in one smooth motion, poured the entire bowl directly over her head. "Ah!" Clara's piercing shriek echoed through the dining room as she shot up from her chair, her scalp turning an angry red from the heat. The Harmon family's eyes widened in shock, and they all jumped to their feet. "Ilara Vance, are you out of your mind?" My mother screamed. "You dare to bully her like this right in front of us? What have you been doing behind our backs?" My mother was so incandescent with rage that she raised her hand to slap me. But before her hand could make contact, her nose began to bleed, thick red drops splashing onto the pristine white floor like scattered petals. "Mom, why is your nose bleeding?" Leo exclaimed. "It's all because of this little witch." Just then, my father's phone rang shrilly. "Mr. Harmon, something's happened at the company. You need to come down here immediately." One crisis after another left the Harmons with no time to fuss over Clara's scalded head. The threat of trouble at the company was far more pressing, and Clara's continued wailing from the pain quickly frayed their already thin patience. My father was the first to snap. "All right, stop howling. You're bringing bad luck into this house first thing in the morning, making a complete mess. If anything happens to the company, we're all finished." Clara's crying stopped abruptly. "Dad, you actually yelled at me? She's the one who hurt me." This time, my father didn't respond. He just hastily threw on his coat and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Compared to his family, he valued profit far more. My mother's nosebleed wouldn't stop. "What's going on? Why won't it stop?" she cried, dabbing at it frantically with a napkin. "Mom, let me take you to the hospital. Let's go," Leo said, grabbing his car keys and pulling her toward the door, leaving Clara momentarily forgotten. She clutched her head, staring dumbfounded as her family abandoned her one by one. Finally, she redirected the full force of her anger onto me. "Ilara Vance, get on your knees and apologize to me right now," she screamed. My eyes narrowed slightly, a dangerous glint appearing in their depths. In all my 1,000 years of existence, no one had ever dared to demand that I kneel and apologize. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice low and cold. She cautiously took half a step back, but still craned her neck to yell, "You're the one who hurt me. Look, my hair is coming out in clumps when I touch it. Shouldn't you apologize? You're just a stray who doesn't even know who her real parents are, enjoying a life of luxury in my house. You should know how to be grateful. I know what this is about. You're just afraid that now that I'm back, Mom and Dad won't love you anymore, right?" "Well, let me tell you, Ilara Vance, I came back to kick you out." I glanced at the bright red splotches of blood on the floor and allowed my lips to curve into a faint smile. "You don't need to kick me out," I said. "This house won't be standing for much longer anyway." Clara's eyes flashed with displeasure. "How dare you curse our family?" I looked directly into her eyes and spoke softly, my voice barely a whisper. Don't you feel it? The Harmon family's luck is running out. 7 years ago, on a frigid winter night, people rushed past me on the snowy sidewalk, bundled against the cold. Only the Harmons stopped their minivan and called me into the warmth of their car. After learning I was an orphan, they decided to adopt me, saying that seeing me was like seeing their own lost daughter. In return for their kindness, I decided to help them. My initial intention was simply to lift them from poverty into a comfortable, stable life, but these people were not so easily satisfied. Greed flickered in the eyes of all three. Comfortable? Who cares about comfortable? My father had scoffed. We want to be rich, to live a life above everyone else. Sitting in their worn-out minivan, they fantasized about a future of immense wealth, but I frowned. For their act of kindness in taking me in, I could help them achieve a comfortable existence. But great wealth, I explained, would come at a terrible price. Your collective good fortune won't support great wealth, I told them plainly, unless you are willing to trade your lifespans for it. Are you truly willing? Unexpectedly, all three of them nodded in unison. You only live once, my father had exclaimed. Of course you want to live a spectacular life. Dying young is fine. You'll just be reincarnated sooner. The moment they spoke those words, the pact was sealed. Over the past 7 years, the Harmon family transformed from being dirt poor to becoming one of the most prominent families in high society. They had enjoyed every luxury imaginable, and the price for it all was the remainder of their natural lifespans. Each time they had come to me with a fake illness, a pang of pity had moved me to use my own essence to try and grant them a normal life, to undo the terrible bargain they had made, but it seemed they had forgotten their side of the deal. And so, the price was finally coming due. For humans, the greatest taboo is to forget your roots. As soon as my mother returned from the hospital, Clara rushed to her side. Mom, what did the doctors say? Why did your nose suddenly start bleeding like that? My mother patted her hand reassuringly. They couldn't find anything wrong, she said. Then her gaze fell on her daughter's head. But how is your head? Oh dear, you're bald in such a large spot. At her words, the family's attention snapped back to me, their expressions once again filled with fury. Leo took 2 aggressive steps in my direction. Elara, Vance, how could you be so heavy-handed? Clara is a girl and now she has a bald spot. How is she supposed to go out in public? I gave him a cold, dismissive look and placed a hand over my own chest. So, hair is more important than a heart, is it? A flicker of unease crossed Leo's face. Regardless, you shouldn't have done that, he insisted. You need to understand that Clara is our biological daughter. You've enjoyed her good life for so long, and you owe her this. It's wrong of you to hold a grudge. I was about to respond when the front door opened again. My father had returned, his face ashen, and a collective sense of dread fell over the family. Dad, what happened with the company? Is it serious? Leo asked, his voice laced with anxiety. My father rubbed his temples wearily and sank onto the couch. There are some serious issues with the company's accounts, he explained, his voice grim. It's currently under investigation. All of you behave yourselves and don't cause any more trouble. This is a critical time. With a major company crisis looming, everyone fell silent. The family sat together, murmuring amongst themselves. How could the company be investigated out of nowhere? Dad, did we offend someone? Leo wondered aloud. They tossed around various theories, but couldn't come up with a logical explanation. My father even took 2 bottles of expensive liquor from the cellar to go and visit an influential contact. Little did they know, the person they truly needed to appease was sitting right there in their living room. I silently glanced at the calendar. 5 days left until it all came to an end. For the next 2 days, a cloud of anxiety hung over the Harmon household. But Clara, having just been reunited with her family, hadn't yet tired of her newfound wealth. She began spending money with reckless abandon, buying designer clothes and luxury goods as if the family's fortune was infinite. While the atmosphere in the house was thick with tension, a loud bang suddenly erupted from the study. Where is Clara? Does she want to bankrupt this family or something? My father roared. Leo emerged from his room at the sound of the commotion. Dad, our family isn't in that dire of a situation yet, he said soothingly. Clara just got back, and of course her expenses are going to be high. Let her spend a bit. It's true she's been through a lot over the years. What he said wasn't entirely wrong, but my father's face was flushed with anger. Spending a bit is fine, he shouted. But she just maxed out my credit card. What? Leo's eyes widened. He immediately called Clara and told her to come home. Watching the employees from various luxury boutiques carry in box after box, my parents' faces grew pale with a mixture of anger and despair, leaving them speechless. As soon as Clara walked through the door, my father roared, "Go and return all of these things right now." Clara froze, her eyes immediately welling up with tears. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing?" she cried, her voice trembling. "I've seen Alara's closet. It's full of designer brands. I'm your biological daughter, so what's wrong with me buying some new clothes? Don't be so obviously biased." My mother sighed, her expression weary. "Clara, times have changed. You need to consider our current financial situation when you spend money." Clara burst into tears, then shot a resentful glare in my direction. "It's all your fault. You got to enjoy all of this instead of me," she wailed. "I don't care. I want to spend money too. I want to live like a rich socialite or I'll just die." Another one willing to make a deal. This was becoming interesting. "Are you willing to have all your future wealth concentrated and spent right now?" I asked her. Clara waved her hand impatiently. "I'm willing. Why wouldn't I be? I'll worry about the future later. What do I care? Life is short and I want to live in the moment." The moment she spoke those words, my dark pupils flashed red for an instant. Clara herself had agreed to the terms. As soon as the deal was struck, my father's phone rang. "Mr. Harmon, there's been a breakthrough with the company's issues. You don't need to rush anymore." A huge sigh of relief washed over everyone, and my father waved his hand dismissively. Forget it, forget it. You bought them, you bought them. Just be more mindful of the situation when you spend money in the future." Clara was ecstatic, completely unaware that the course of her life had just been irrevocably predetermined. 3 days left. Clara's moment in the spotlight, along with the rest of the Harmon family, was rapidly approaching its end. Ever since she had been scolded, I found Clara's presence more and more irritating. She began to try everything she could think of to drive me out of the house. After several of her schemes failed, she resorted to framing me, but her attempts were laughably clumsy. "Dad, Mom, come quick. I can't take it anymore, boo-hoo." Clara's wails echoed from her bedroom. The entire family rushed to see what was wrong, and driven by a mild curiosity, I followed them. When I saw that all of her new designer clothes had been shredded to ribbons in her closet, I couldn't help but let out a small laugh. The Harmon family didn't have much money left for her to squander. Clara had just severed her own last lifeline. "What? What happened here?" my mother cried, her voice trembling. "She only bought these a few days ago. This whole closet of clothes is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. How did this happen?" Clara was sobbing uncontrollably, and then she pointed a shaking finger directly at me. My father raised his hand to strike me, but I swiftly caught his wrist. "Dad, it's not too late to figure things out before you act," I said calmly. While holding his wrist, I secretly checked his pulse. Late-stage kidney failure. It seemed he was already beginning to swell all over. Clara's ruined clothes were thrown at my feet. "See for yourself. Just look," she shrieked. "These were bought with a lot of money. If you didn't like me, you could have just said so. Why ruin Mom and Dad's hard-earned money? Today you're cutting up clothes, but what about tomorrow? Are you going to lay your hands on Mom and Dad?" She wasn't entirely stupid. She knew how to twist the situation to make my parents feel personally threatened. My mother was furious when she heard this and immediately pulled Clara into a protective embrace. "Alara Vance, I am truly disappointed in you," she said, her voice cold. "We kept you here to take care of our daughter, not for you to compete with her for affection and family resources. Leave. Get out of our house. We don't welcome you here." My heart remained perfectly calm. To a creature who has lived for 1,000 years, 8 years is but the blink of an eye. But being framed and forced to leave was not my style. Even though I could have ended their lives in an instant, they weren't worth the negative karma. Meeting Clara's smug, triumphant gaze, I simply picked up my phone. "I can leave," I said. But I didn't ruin these clothes. Let's call the police first and sort this out. The police will know whose fingerprints are on the scissors once they examine them. Clara tried to stop me, but it was too late. Her face went pale, and my mother held her, comforting her. "Don't be scared. It's okay," she cooed. "The truth will come out soon, and then we'll see how she tries to argue her way out of this. We're already so tight on money lately. Buying these things for you was already a stretch, and we swallowed our heartache just to fulfill your wish, only for her to destroy them. That's just not right." The whole family was seething with righteous anger, so much so that no one noticed Clara's face growing paler with each word my mother spoke. When the police arrived, my parents were still fuming. "Officer, these are things we just bought a few days ago, and they are very expensive," my father explained. "If it turns out she really did it, can we demand that she goes to jail?" The police officer nodded. "Yes, if the value of the damaged property meets a certain threshold for conviction, it is possible." I smiled, eagerly presenting my hands to have my fingerprints taken. After they were done, I looked at Clara. "To be fair," I said, "shouldn't you have yours taken as well?" Clara held her ground. "Nonsense. These are my clothes. Of course my fingerprints are on them," she blurted out. "Maybe you were wearing gloves when you did it, to avoid leaving any evidence." I didn't say anything, just quietly scanned the room. Finally, my gaze settled on the space under her sofa. Clara hadn't even bothered to properly dispose of the scissors she had used. Sure enough, as soon as I approached the sofa, Clara nervously blocked my path. "What are you doing? This is my room," she snapped. I couldn't be bothered with her histrionics, so I turned to the police officer instead. "Officer," I said, "I suspect the weapon is in here." "You're full of it." Clara's reaction was extreme, which only served to heighten the officer's suspicion. When the scissors were retrieved from under the sofa, they were indeed covered in many fingerprints. We were all taken to the police station. During the ride, Leo kept mocking me. "See, a biological sister is always better," he sneered. "People with unclear backgrounds don't understand what kind of inferior genes they have. Our family raising a thief? It's truly a misfortune. Destroying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property just like that. Who knows how much more you've ruined in our house?" One false accusation after another was piled onto me. Even though I was usually too lazy to argue with them, I couldn't help but speak up now. "Is the case closed?" I asked. Tom froze for a moment. "What?" he asked. I patiently repeated myself. I said, "Officer, is the case closed? If it's not closed, then you're making baseless accusations, and spreading rumors carries legal responsibility." Leo laughed, looking at me with an expression of utter disbelief. "If it wasn't you, who else could it be?" he scoffed. "Are you trying to say my sister destroyed those things herself and then framed you? She knows the current situation of our family. She wouldn't do something so stupid." Clara subtly tugged at Leo's sleeve. "Brother, stop talking," she whispered. Leo misunderstood, thinking his sister was being kind and trying to save me some face. "Don't worry, Clara," he said. "Today we will definitely get justice for you." "Elara Vance, do you dare to make a bet with me? If you lose, you will willingly go to jail." I smiled slightly and agreed without a moment's hesitation. "And what if you lose?" I asked. Leo was overflowing with confidence. Whatever you want," he replied. Beside us, Clara was on the verge of a panic attack, her lower lip nearly bleeding from how hard she was biting it. "Brother, don't bet with her. Let's just withdraw the case, okay?" she pleaded. "It's not worth it for something like this, brother," she begged again. My lips involuntarily curled upward. I tapped his chest with my fingertip, right where his heart was, then pointed to his head. "Anyway," I mused, "it's useless to keep, so it might as well have been lost in that car accident along with your heart." During the half-hour wait for the results, Clara was a bundle of nerves. She came up with countless excuses to try and withdraw the case, but unfortunately for her, I was the one who had called the police, so she had no say in the matter. Half an hour later, the fingerprint comparison results were ready. "Officer, what's the verdict?" my father asked impatiently. "Did this ungrateful adopted daughter cut up my real daughter's clothes? We don't want compensation, and we won't accept a settlement. We just want her to go to jail." The police officer looked at me, then at Clara, who was huddled like a frightened quail behind her family. There were a lot of fabric remnants on the scissors, he explained. After repeated comparisons, we can confirm that this was the weapon used. But unfortunately, we did not find Alara Vance's fingerprints on the scissors. Everyone frowned deeply. How can that be? My mother asked. Clara seized the opportunity to speak up. Maybe she was wearing gloves when she did it, she suggested. She was the one who called the police and asked for fingerprints to be taken too. I chuckled. You really know how to turn the tables, don't you? The police officer's gaze towards Clara also grew colder. But Miss Clara, the officer continued, we found a large number of your fingerprints on those scissors. Clara seemed to have anticipated this and immediately said, those are my things, so it's normal for my fingerprints to be on them. I use them every day, and if they're worn out from use, that's my choice. What does it have to do with you? The police officer sneered and directly presented the receipt as evidence. How you use them is indeed none of our business, he stated. But the delivery receipt shows that the scissors were just bought an hour ago. Both the fingerprints and the fabric scraps point to you. Miss Clara, you're crying wolf, aren't you? What? The Harmon family was dumbfounded. My father pointed at her, his fingertip trembling uncontrollably. You wanted to kick her out. You could have just told us directly, he stammered. Why ruin things for no reason? You should know our company is having problems right now. These things were just bought a few days ago, and you just destroyed them? I watched them calmly. So, I asked, why were you deliberately targeting me? Logically, when Mom, Dad, and Leo were sick, I donated everything I could. 3 lives. Even if you didn't need me to save you, I still went through with it. In your human minds, I should owe you nothing anymore. Why did you have to go and ruin your own good fortune? Perhaps because I had brought up their fabricated illnesses and my willingness to help, the family suddenly looked at me with a flicker of guilt. Clara stammered for a long time, at first denying it, but then, seeing that no one believed her, she simply gave up. Yes, I ruined them myself, so what? She burst out. This is my house. Why should an adopted daughter be able to boss me around? All of you are taking her side now. My dad was so angry he could barely squeeze out a few words through his gritted teeth. We're mad that you wasted money. As soon as he finished speaking, my father suddenly swayed, stumbled back 2 steps, and fainted. Dad, are you okay? Leo cried. I calculated the time. Oh, only 2 days left. The initial stage of their karmic illnesses was over, and their respective afflictions were about to erupt in full force. My father was rushed to the emergency room. After a series of examinations, the doctor's face was grim. He called the family outside, and my mother's eyes were red with worry. Doctor, is it very serious? What kind of illness is it? She asked. The doctor pushed up his glasses. The patient has widespread swelling, he explained. All of his test results are very poor. We can essentially confirm it's acute kidney failure. The family stumbled back in shock. Acute kidney failure? My father stammered from his gurney. How do we treat it? We'll pay whatever it takes. The doctor sighed. The only current option is a kidney transplant, but the waiting list for a donor kidney is long, he said. It could be 1 or 2 years, or even 3 to 5. However, you have several children. If they're willing, you could have them tested for a match. After the doctor left, everyone's gaze fell on me. I rested my chin in my hand and smiled, gesturing toward my right side. Why are you all looking at me? Wasn't my kidney already taken by you to be made into a specimen? I looked at Clara with a half smile. Now that Dad's body has a real problem, you, as his biological daughter, should step up, shouldn't you? Clara hesitated. My mother was torn, looking between Clara and Leo. Leo, who had been so affectionate towards his sister just days ago, grew anxious. Mom, I'm a man, he argued. If I lose a kidney, how will I live my life? You don't want me to carry on the family name, do you? My mother wavered at his words and turned to grab Clara's hand. Clara, this is your father's life, she pleaded. I can only rely on you. Clara looked down, her brows tightly furrowed in silence. Before long, my mother's nose started bleeding again. She instinctively wiped at it, but the blood just kept flowing, smearing across her face in an unstoppable stream. "What's going on?" she cried out to a passing doctor. "Doctor, just tell me directly what's happening. I can handle it." The doctor hesitated before delivering the news. "It's blood cancer," he stated bluntly. "Commonly known as leukemia, it's in the late stages." Those few words were like a bolt of lightning. My mother's body went rigid, and she remained unresponsive until she was admitted to a hospital room of her own. With two of them now diagnosed, the Harmon siblings were completely overwhelmed. I stood by the window watching the chaos unfold. Then I heard my mother murmur to herself, "How can this be such a coincidence?" She wrapped herself completely in her blanket, her eyes wide with fear. "Alara," she whispered, "do you think this could be retribution? Why is it such a perfect coincidence? Why?" "This is retribution, my dear mother," I thought to myself. The doctor frowned at her test results. "In this situation, it's best to notify the family to do bone marrow matching as soon as possible," he said. "Are there any family members willing to be tested?" Even though her biological son and daughter were standing right there in the room, she grabbed my hand first, her eyes pleading. "Alara, you've already donated once. Will you donate again for me?" I quietly pulled my hand away. "Mom, you just said you were going to kick me out of the house," I reminded her. "We're not related anymore, so how can you ask me to donate bone marrow?" Then I looked at Leo and Clara. "This is your biological mother. You two can't just stand by and watch her die, can you?" The two of them exchanged a quick glance and both fell silent. My parents were placed in the same VIP hospital room. Leo and Clara visited them every day, but neither of them ever brought up the topic of donating a kidney or bone marrow. That night, when I returned to the house, I overheard the siblings plotting in the kitchen. "Instead of hurting our own bodies to find a match for them," Leo said in a low voice, "why don't we just take control of the company ourselves?" "Good point," Clara agreed. "We, the younger generation, are the new hope. They're both over 50, with one foot in the grave already. There's no point in them living any longer." Just a few hours later, my parents were barely clinging to life in their hospital beds. Seeing their children arrive, they both struggled to sit up. My father tugged at Clara's sleeve. "Clara, please save Dad," he begged. "Go donate a kidney to me. When I get through this, I'll give you shares in the company." My mom clutched Tom's arm, tears streaming down her face. "Son, I raised you since you were little," she sobbed. "Can you really bear to watch your mother die like this? We're family. There's a chance we'll match. Save me, please save me. Mom will let you inherit the company, okay?" I watched with cold, dispassionate eyes as Leo and Clara exchanged another glance. Then, at the same time, they both pushed their parents' hands away. "Mom, Dad, you should just accept that you're getting old, okay?" Leo said. "Birth, old age, sickness, and death are a normal part of life. Once you get an illness like this, you can't escape death." My parents' pupils constricted in shock, clearly not expecting their own biological children to say such a thing. But we can still be saved," my dad pleaded. "As long as we find a match, there's still hope." Clara snorted. "Dad, do you have any idea how much it costs to treat your illnesses?" she asked. "The company is already struggling right now. Can't you save some money?" "I get lectured for buying clothes, so now it's your turn to be sensible, isn't it?" My parents' faces turned red with fury. My dad used all of his remaining strength to pick up a water cup from his bedside table and threw it at Clara. "Animal!" he roared. If I had known, I would have just sold you back then instead of ever bringing you back." Clara's face instantly contorted with rage when she heard that. "So all those years of suffering were because of you," she shrieked. "Then you deserve to die. This is what you owe me." Clara kicked both of my parents' beds, spat on the floor, and then stormed out of the room. Leo seemed to recall something, his face turning grim for a moment, and then he too walked away without a backward glance. My parents' hearts raced with anger, and the cardiac monitors began to show dangerous abnormalities. My dad, for some reason, suddenly seemed to understand everything. He strained to shout at Leo's retreating back, Your mother's and my fake illnesses have come true. Do you really think you can escape? Leo's steps faltered for a moment, then he scoffed and left. My parents then looked at me, tears welling in their eyes. Elara, my mom whispered. I looked at them expressionlessly. I gave you one of my kidneys. Did you forget? I asked. My bone marrow was dug out by you and fed to a dog, don't you remember? They both shed silent tears. My mother even shakily climbed out of her bed, fell to the floor, and knelt. Elara, please, just give me a little more bone marrow, she pleaded. Bone marrow is okay, right? Mom doesn't want to die yet. Mom hasn't lived enough. I smiled, my voice carrying a profound weight. I told you already, didn't I? Without my flesh and blood to support you, your lives won't last much longer. I gave you a chance, but you didn't want it yourselves. And also, dying young. Wasn't that your own choice? My parents froze, their faces a mask of bewildered horror. What do you mean? My mom asked. I kindly helped them recall their forgotten bargain. When you adopted me all those years ago, you yourselves chose to become rich, even if it meant dying young, I reminded them. I helped you go from poverty to your current position. At 56, I even let you live 2 years longer than you should have. My parents seemed to remember the incident, and a raw fear flickered in their eyes. What? All that? It was real? My dad stammered. To help them find some semblance of peace before their end, I offered a reassuring look. Go peacefully, I said. Your son and daughter are not good people, and they won't have a good end either. The car accident that was supposed to injure his heart, that was his own choice too. Their pupils suddenly dilated. I spoke gently. Go peacefully, and don't expect a next life either. Don't forget, you already exchanged your next life's fortune for the chance to find your biological daughter. My connection with all of you ends here. I walked out of the ward, and just as I reached the door, the heart monitors began to beep loudly and continuously. Patients in beds 36 and 37 have passed away, a nurse shouted. I lifted my leg and stepped over the threshold, leaving their world behind. Now, only Leo and Clara remained. The siblings were too lazy to even hold a funeral, instead paying extra for an expedited property inheritance. Leo naturally took over Harmon Enterprises, and Clara received a significant number of shares. Both of them immediately turned on me. Why are you still staying in our house? Leo scoffed. Mom and Dad are gone. No one's protecting you anymore, so scram. Harmon Enterprises belongs to us siblings. Don't even think about coveting it. I chuckled. It's just an empty shell, I said. What's there to covet? Their faces changed. What nonsense are you talking? Clara snapped. Sour grapes. Are you crazy? I raised an eyebrow, and just then, Leo received a call. It was from the company. Mr. Harmon, this is bad. A large group of police just arrived at the company. Leo's face turned pale. He shoved Clara aside, rushed out to his car, and sped off. Clara stumbled from the push, but as she looked at Leo's retreating back, a small, dark smile played on her lips. Goodbye, big brother, she murmured. Clara's face twisted, and she unleashed her pent-up anxiety as anger onto me. She grabbed my arm, intending to strike me, but I was faster. I seized her by the neck and lifted her clean off the ground. Elara Vance, she gasped, her legs kicking uselessly. Let me go. Her face turned a deep red, her eyeballs slightly protruding. I looked at her coldly. Who gave you permission to keep bouncing around in front of me? I asked. I exerted a little more force and threw her across the room. She lay on the ground, gasping for air. Elara Vance, why are you so strong? She wheezed. Are you even human? I'm calling the police. I'm calling the police. I walked step by step towards her. Calling the police? I said. Don't rush. The police will be contacting you very soon. Just as I finished speaking, Clara's phone rang. Hello, is this Miss Clara Harmon? The voice on the other end asked. Your brother, Leo Harmon, was just in a major car accident and has been sent to the hospital. Clara's hand went limp and her phone clattered to the floor. She stared at me, her face a mask of blank terror. How did you know? She whispered. Leo's heart was severely damaged, just as I had foreseen. However, this time there was no heart donation waiting for him. He could only have an artificial heart implanted. But because his brain had also suffered severe trauma in the crash, he emerged from the surgery as a complete imbecile. Harmon Enterprises then fell entirely into Clara's hands. Unfortunately, the company promptly went bankrupt due to the illegal operations Leo had been running. Not only did she lose everything, but Clara also ended up with a mountain of debt. She was on the verge of a total breakdown. No, I don't want it. Give it to Alara Vance. I don't want any of this. The company is yours, all yours, she screamed at me. I smiled. How could I, a mere adopted daughter, be worthy of inheriting your family's assets? Ultimately, the millions in debt fell squarely on Clara's shoulders. Unable to repay her debts, she was evicted from her home by creditors. To make matters worse, she had already destroyed all of her valuable clothes and jewelry. She had no way out. The remaining creditors, unable to collect their money, sold Clara to a disreputable establishment to entertain guests. She would never be free again. But my karma, my good karma, still wasn't full. Another winter arrived. I once again took on the appearance of a 7-year-old girl, squatting in the heavy, falling snow, looking up at the passing strangers. Ma'am, I said, my voice small and shivering, I'm so hungry.